From an emperor strangled in his bath by a wrestler, to one dragged naked through the streets by his own people, to one whose body was so hated it was thrown into a sewer. These are the most brutal deaths of Roman emperors. Number 15. Galba. Galba ruled for 7 months. He was old, stern, and deeply unpopular with the soldiers because he refused to pay them the bonuses his predecessor had promised. "I choose my soldiers," he reportedly said. "I do not buy them." It was a principled stand. It was also a death sentence. In January of 69, the Praetorian Guard declared for a rival named Otho. When Galba rode into the forum to confront the crisis, his own bodyguards deserted him. Soldiers dragged him from his litter and hacked him apart in broad daylight. His head was carried around on a spear. His body lay in the street for hours, ignored by passers-by, until a former slave finally collected it. No one else would touch it. Number 14. Pertinax. Pertinax inherited a mess. After Commodus was murdered, the treasury was empty and the Praetorian Guard was spoiled and undisciplined. Pertinax tried to fix it. He cut palace expenses, auctioned off Commodus's luxuries, and attempted to restore order to the military. The Guard hated him for it. They had grown accustomed to bribes and indulgence, and this new emperor was offering neither. After just 86 days, a mob of angry soldiers stormed the palace. Pertinax walked out to meet them unarmed, hoping to calm them with a speech. He had talked down mutinous soldiers before. This time, one soldier threw a spear through his chest before he could finish. They hacked his body apart and paraded his head through the streets on a pike. Number 13. Didius Julianus. After murdering Pertinax, the Praetorians did something that shocked even Rome. They auctioned off the empire to the highest bidder. Didius Julianus won by promising each guardsman 25,000 sesterces. He entered the palace as emperor, but his reign was doomed from the start. When Septimius Severus marched on Rome with battle-hardened legions, the Praetorians abandoned their new emperor without a fight. Julianus was found alone in the palace and beheaded after 66 days on the throne. He reportedly asked his executioner, "What evil have I done? Whom have I killed?" No one answered. Number 12. Nero. Nero's end was pathetic, more than brutal, but it belongs on this list. When the Senate declared him a public enemy and his own guards deserted, he fled Rome in disguise and hid in a freedman's villa outside the city. He wanted to die, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He held a dagger to his throat, pulled it away, held it again. He wept and muttered about what a loss his death would be to the arts. Finally, with soldiers closing in, his secretary Epaphroditus helped guide the blade into his neck. His last words, according to Suetonius, "What an artist dies in me." Number 11. Maximinus Thrax. Maximinus was a giant of a man, possibly over 7 feet tall, who rose from common soldier to emperor through sheer brutality. But he pushed his troops past their limits. During a prolonged siege of the city of Aquileia in 238, his starving and exhausted soldiers finally snapped. They stormed his tent, killed him and his teenage son, and cut off their heads. The heads were sent to Rome, where the Senate had them paraded through the city on poles before tossing them into the sewer. Even in death, Maximinus was treated like garbage. Number 10. Pupienus and Balbinus. After Maximinus died, the Senate appointed 2 elderly senators as co-emperors, Pupienus and Balbinus. The Praetorian Guard despised them both. These were not soldiers, they were politicians, Senate appointees with no military credentials. After just 99 days, the guardsmen stormed the imperial palace, dragged both old men into the streets, stripped them naked, beat them savagely, and hacked them to pieces in full view of the public. Their mutilated bodies were left lying in the road as a warning. Number 9. Aurelian. Aurelian was one of Rome's greatest emperors. He reunited a fractured empire, drove back barbarian invasions, and earned the title Restorer of the World. And he died because of a lie. His personal secretary, facing punishment for some minor offense, forged a list of officers' names and presented it as the emperor's death list. The officers, convinced Aurelian planned to execute them, decided to strike first. They ambushed and killed him. When they discovered the list was a forgery, they executed the secretary in a rage. But the damage was done. Rome lost one of its finest rulers over a piece of paper. Number 8. Majorian. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was crumbling. Majorian was one of its last capable rulers, a man who actually tried to save what remained. He reformed the tax system, rebuilt the navy, and personally led military campaigns against the Vandals. His reward? His own general, a half-barbarian warlord named Ricimer, decided Majorian was becoming too independent. In 461, Ricimer had him arrested, publicly stripped of his imperial robes, beaten in front of a crowd, and then beheaded. The Western Empire would fall 15 years later. Number 7. Domitian. Domitian was paranoid, and he had good reason to be. He had executed so many senators and officials that a conspiracy was inevitable. In September of 96, it came. A palace steward approached him with a petition, claiming to have uncovered a plot. When Domitian reached for the document, the steward stabbed him in the groin. Domitian fought back with desperate fury. He wrestled for the knife, screamed for help, tried to gouge out his attacker's eyes. But more conspirators rushed in and finished him with 7 wounds. He died on his bedroom floor, clawing at his killers. Number 6. Caligula. Caligula was the first Roman emperor to be assassinated. By the year 41, his behavior had become so erratic and cruel that even his own Praetorian Guard feared him. He humiliated senators, executed men on whims, and seemed to delight in cruelty for its own sake. In January, a group of officers cornered him in a palace corridor and stabbed him more than 30 times. But they weren't finished. They hunted down his wife Caesonia and killed her too. Then they found his infant daughter, Julia Drusilla, barely 2 years old, and smashed her head against a wall to ensure no heir survived. The dynasty of Augustus, Rome's first imperial family, ended in a blood-soaked hallway. Number 5. Caracalla. Caracalla was one of Rome's most violent emperors, but his death was almost comically undignified. In April of 217, he was traveling through Mesopotamia when he stopped on the roadside to relieve himself. A soldier named Martialis approached him from behind and stabbed him while he was still urinating. Martialis had a personal grudge. Caracalla had executed his brother. The assassination was quick, brutal, and deliberately humiliating. One of the most feared men in the Roman world died with his pants down. Number 4. Commodus. Commodus believed he was Hercules reborn. He fought as a gladiator in the arena, strangled lions with his bare hands, and executed wounded fighters for sport. He renamed Rome after himself. He renamed the months after himself. By the end of 192, his inner circle had decided he needed to die before he destroyed the empire entirely. They tried poison first, slipping it into his wine. He vomited it up. So they sent in Narcissus, his personal wrestling partner, to finish the job. Narcissus found him in his bath and strangled him to death with his bare hands. The man who thought he was a god died naked and wet on a bathroom floor. Number 3. Geta. Geta and his older brother Caracalla were supposed to rule together as co-emperors. Their father Septimius Severus had hoped shared power would keep the peace. Instead, the brothers hated each other so intensely they could barely be in the same room. In December of 211, Caracalla arranged a meeting in their mother's private apartments, supposedly to reconcile. When Geta arrived unarmed, believing it was safe, soldiers burst in with swords drawn. Geta ran to his mother, Julia Domna, and clung to her. They killed him in her arms. Her hands were slashed trying to shield him, and she was drenched in her son's blood. Caracalla then ordered a purge of Geta's supporters. Somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people were killed. Number 2. Elagabalus. Elagabalus became emperor at 14 and was dead by 18. His religious practices and personal behavior scandalized even decadent Rome. By 222, the Praetorian Guard had had enough. When soldiers came for him, Elagabalus tried to hide in a palace latrine. They found him there, cowering with his mother. Both were killed on the spot. Their bodies were stripped naked and dragged through the streets of Rome while crowds jeered and threw garbage. The corpses were mutilated beyond recognition. What was left of Elagabalus was thrown into the Tiber. Some ancient sources say into a sewer. Number 1. Vitellius. In December of 69, the forces of Vespasian entered Rome, and Vitellius knew it was over. He tried to negotiate. He tried to abdicate. No one would accept his surrender, so he fled. First, he hid in the palace. Then he ran to a doorkeeper's tiny lodge and barricaded the door with a bed and a mattress. Soldiers found him anyway, cowering in the dark. They dragged him out, tied his hands behind his back, looped a noose around his neck, and forced his head up with a sword under his chin so everyone could see his face. Then, they paraded him half-naked through the streets of Rome. The mob pelted him with dung and rotten food. They spat on him. They tortured him slowly with small cuts, drawing out his agony for the crowd's entertainment. When he finally died, they dragged his body through the streets with a meat hook and threw it into the Tiber. He had been emperor for 8 months. The throne of Rome was the most powerful seat in the ancient world. Men killed for it, died for it, and destroyed their own families to keep it. And for many of the men who sat on it, that throne became their grave. If you made it this far, you should probably subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, there's another one on screen right now that's even better.